Good evening and welcome to Nashville. I'm Alan Jackson. You don't have to look far to see the further away we drift from the truth of Scripture, the easier it is to be deceived. It makes me think of bank tellers when they're trained to recognize what's an actual dollar bill and what's a fake. They don't spend time examining counterfeit money. They study the real dollar so they can recognize what it looks like. Then it's easy to spot what's fake. When we spend our time focusing on God's Word and His truth, it's much easier to notice when something is off. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to technology. There's AI and there are deep fakes. There are gaming sites that pop up out of nowhere, many of them looking for traffic and the money that comes with that. And they're launched with no sense of social responsibility as they capture our kids for hours at a time. So tonight, we brought in a guest who's an expert on this rising digital world and how to face it safely. He was a top executive at the New York Stock Exchange when the index fell a record 22% in 1987. People were panicking. Rich Torrenzano, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very pleased to be with you today.
Well, there's a lot to discuss. The TikTok deal, the good and the bad of AI, the growing number of what are called deep fakes. Maybe let's start with the TikTok deal. It's been a long time in the making, but the U.S. investors have the majority share now and China has a minority stake. Listen to the president's reaction after he concluded the deal with China's leader.
I had a great call with President Xi, and as you know, he approved the TikTok deal, and we're in the process. We have some great investors, some of the biggest in the world, American investors, great people, and we look forward to getting that deal closed.
So I'm curious, can we now stop worrying about China trying to control the minds of our children now that the Americans control the algorithm?
A little bit. I think this is a really good first step forward. I think we always have to be very conscious of what China is trying to do to our children and our nation. They have not been a good partner for many, many years. And while I think this is a great step forward for the president, we'll have American control of the technology and the algorithms and the data. There's still much more to do.
Well, you came from the business world originally, and TikTok has been vital to helping grow businesses big and small. Do you expect this new TikTok ownership to provide the tools for better U.S. business growth?
I really do think so. TikTok is a terrific tool, particularly attracting younger audiences. The president has said several times it helped him with the youth vote across America. And I think with Americans now on the board and Americans control the technology, I think this can grow into a vital force like some of the other platforms that we're very familiar with, like Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and others.
Well, let's move to the deep fakes. Start by telling us what a deep fake is and how we can recognize one.
Well, a deep fake is a fake, and it comes in three versions. It comes in audio, it comes in video, and it comes in photographs. This kind of started out a few years ago when there was a picture of the Pope in a puffy jacket, and that was a photographic deep fake. But just a few weeks ago, you may recall that Susie Wiles, the president's chief of staff, had an audio deep fake where she was supposedly calling different executives and different senators, and it wasn't her voice. And a video deep fake is probably the most devastating, where it's an actual video of what you think is somebody saying something, requesting something, doing something. This can have dramatic effects upon financial markets. It can have dramatic effects upon reputation. It can have dramatic effects upon the company's morale if a CEO or a CFO or a director is seen in what is considered a compromising positions. These things happen very quickly today. They're driven by AI. They happen in a matter of minutes, not hours and days. And you have to really be trained to spot them and to see what's wrong and how you can address it very, very quickly.
Well, should we be concerned that deepfakes can try to steal my money or be a problem for me or my family?
Well, yeah, I think for individuals, deepfakes are important, but I think some of the more obvious things that we see coming across our email, for example, we should not be clicking on things when we don't know the sender, or when the sender is coming from a suspicious URL or an account. So we have to be mindful of our digital home today. We all live in a house or an apartment, and we do the things that are necessary to protect that. We have a burglar alarm. We have locks on our doors and windows. We have a dog, or we may have a technical dog at the door that barks when someone approaches it. We may leave lights on from time to time that go on and off. We may even tell a neighbor or the local police when we're traveling. Those are all the things we do to protect our home. We need to do things today to protect our digital home. We should have our passwords, and I believe, my personal view, is you should have a different password for every platform. And I know that's very hard for some people. I keep a book of all my passwords for my company and for myself. I do not keep passwords on my computer. That's the most silly thing to do. So those passwords need to change, particularly for banks and financial institutions, about every 6 months. Some of the less obvious things are you have a password on your entranceway for your Wi-Fi, regardless of what company you use. That password needs to be changed from time to time. Where possible, you should put 2 passwords there, because that protects your home, your digital home, from people coming in from the outside.
I think that's such an important point. I want to take just a second with that. You know, historically, I'm more familiar with having digital security in the workplace, you know, with firewalls and all the things that happen there. But I hear you saying it is of paramount importance that now we take the time and effort to do digital security in our private lives, in our homes.
Yeah, there's another dimension of this too, if I may. We just had a situation a few months ago where a major securities firm came to us because a CEO was being attacked. And they knew where he was traveling, and they knew where he was, his new car with his license plate number and his new home in the Hamptons. And the security firm couldn't figure out where all this information was coming from. So the head of the firm, who I know, called me and said, "Rich, we're baffled by this. Could you have your team look at it?" And we did, and we studied it for a couple of days. And what we found was that all the information was coming from his wife and his teenage daughters on the internet, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Their new house, their new car, where they were heading on vacation, which created enormous security risk for him and his family. So it's not only the numbers that we have to be careful about, but it's what we post on our somewhat very serious, and we don't take them seriously enough, various social media platforms.
So it's going to take a heightened consciousness of everybody in our orbits for us to stay safe.
That's correct.
Wow. If we happen to come across a deepfake or something that we think is, what do we do with that?
Well, first of all, they're not hard to fake, not hard to identify, but they're getting harder to identify. You'll see a mouth not necessarily on a video matching the words. You may see a background which is off. You may see a face movement which is off. Most people will not encounter deepfakes in the next year, but most corporations will. Most business organizations will. And I think this is one of the biggest threats facing business organizations in the coming year that most of them are not aware of. It is a legal issue, it is an IT issue, but these things happen in minutes and hours, not days and weeks and months. So IT and legal can address them. So deepfakes are not the biggest problem yet for people, individuals, but they are an enormous problem coming at business organizations in the next 12 months.
Rich, can you stay with us for another segment?
Absolutely. Good. Thank you.
I'd like to discuss the potential and dangers of AI when we come back. And if those of you watching would like to jump in with your thoughts on the discussion, log on to ajnow.com and send us an email. It's simple, and we read all of them. I'll be right back. We're back now with Rich Torrenzano, the author of Command the Conversation, How to Engage, Influence, and Inspire People in These Days of AI. Well, I saw some disturbing and yet predictable online postings in the wake of the shooting of Charlie Kirk, a simulator of assassinations that showed up on the children's gaming site Roblox. The company pulled it down when parents began to complain, but this is what our children are being fed every day. Are we solely dependent on the companies to police these sites?
Well, first of all, that was disgusting that what happened, and as well as some of the other commentary that we've seen on the internet these past days. But yeah, we are. We really have to have a set of ethics and a set of standards that companies follow. Unfortunately, the bigger companies try to follow these things. The smaller companies are just trying to make a fast buck. And I think, as anything with the internet or on screen or online, we have to be very mindful of what our children are doing at all times and what content they're seeing. That doesn't change in a crisis or in normal times. We have to be very mindful of that. And when these things do happen, we have to be loud and vigorous against these companies and have them change their direction and pull these things down.
Do you have some examples of where AI is making life better for us or easier for those of us who aren't so tech savvy?
Well, there's a number of examples of better and worse. Some of the better examples clearly in the healthcare area. We're going to see surgeries more active. We're going to see our various scans and x-rays read in a much more proficient way. We're going to see our records and data much more effective in our doctor's office and letting them interface with hospitals and many more things in healthcare. In manufacturing, we're seeing lowering the cost of manufacturing and more accurate manufacturing and better use of tools. In our personal life, we're going to see better use of data, particularly in the financial arena. We're going to see financial analysts using data and using market data and financial data to better analyze companies and provide that analysis to institutions and individuals who invest in the market.
Well, they say that AI is going to replace working people, but I wonder if AI will eventually create new jobs, especially for those who know how to integrate it into their work. What do you think?
I think you're right on both counts, Alan. There's no question that AI is a disruptor, and it is going to disrupt a lot of jobs. So if you think your job is going to be disrupted, what should you do? And what you should do is look to an area where you can become an expert in AI, where there's a need for AI analysis and AI people to look at all sorts of different things, as I just said, in some of those industries, as well as other industries. But our lives, our jobs, our personal lives, our workplace, our families, all of us are going to be dramatically affected with AI in the next couple of years, much more than we can even imagine right now.
Well, you came out of the financial world as an executive at the New York Stock Exchange. Where are the markets heading as President Trump puts more of his imprint on all sorts of financial issues?
Well, there's usually three things I don't comment on. The best Italian restaurant in New York, whether the Yankees will be in the series, or where the markets might or not go. However, in saying that, let me say the following. Never sell America short. If you go back over the last 50 years, 25 years, 10 years, and you see the disruptions we've had in the markets, from the crash of '87 to the tech bubble to what we saw at the beginning of this year, markets have always gone up. So if you're a long-term investor and you're seeking professional advice, as you should, I think you'll do very well. Particularly as a young person right now, I think you should invest in U.S. markets because they will be higher and bolder than they have ever been when you reach my age.
Well, you know, I'm in Tennessee. I don't know much about Italian restaurants in New York, and the Yankees I can read in the papers, but the Giants are 0-3. Are you holding out any hope there?
No. They're doing much better, but you know, I'm more of a Yankees fan, so I'll stick with that.
Well,
I am holding out hope they're going to be in the series, though.
I've got time, I think, for one quick question. The debt, that $37 trillion that's sitting there, and I know that only represents a real portion of it. How urgent is that? And have you got any ideas on what they can do to help us with that?
Well, this is a huge problem for America. It's not a problem that's going to bring America down right now, but it has to be addressed in many different ways. I think some of the tariffs that we're getting into, the payments on the tariffs, some of that should go against the debt. Just spending has to come down dramatically. I know there's going to be a lot of yelling and screaming about that, but you can't, you know, we all as people have a checkbook, and when there's no money in the checkbook, you can't write a check. Unfortunately, the government has never functioned that way. They just print more money. And when they print more money, it creates inflation in case it creates disruption through everything that we do. So the debt is important. I think the president and the secretary of the treasury are doing things to bring it down. More has to be done, and it has to be done fairly quickly. Otherwise, we're going to have continuous problems on the debt. We're going to have continuous problems in Social Security, and we're going to have continuous problems throughout the nation. But I believe in the next couple of years in the Trump administration, we're going to see some focus on that. He has had to focus on some of the other issues that were more urgent, like the border and crime and so forth. But I think that the debt and our economy is a real part of the focus going forward.
Well, Rich Torrenzano, thank you for your time today. Stay in touch so we can have you back on.
Thank you, Alan, very much. Very good to be with you, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. In a moment, signs of hope we can all see. The digital world with its emerging technologies like AI can be daunting, even frightening. Depending on the intent of the user, it can be harnessed for good or for evil. Yes, we should be concerned with the digital threats targeting us and our loved ones, but I would suggest to you that a bigger threat is an attempt by evil forces to influence our minds and our hearts with a worldview that's contrary to Judeo-Christian values. You know, we can't afford to retreat. If we retreat, we make our children and our grandchildren less safe. We've got to be courageous enough to speak the truth that we know and to not be manipulated by fear. You know, I meet people all the time who say to me they don't agree with me. You know, they'll say to me, you know, they're agnostic. Something like, you know, I don't believe the Bible is God's word, and I don't even believe there is a God, and I think churches are frauds, and you're a charlatan. That's not an unusual conversation for me. And I'll respond, well, you know, good, I'm happy for your opinion. My name's Alan. We're entitled to have those opinions, and that individual should be safe in expressing that. Well, in the same way, we should be safe in expressing that we believe that there is a God. We shouldn't be surprised that people don't like our worldview or intolerant, but that shouldn't make us afraid. It should make us more determined, not angry, not hateful, not belligerent, certainly not violent, but determined. When people treat us unfairly, choose to forgive, choose to be kind. Perhaps the most touching moment during Charlie Kirk's memorial was when Charlie's wife, Erica, was speaking of the man who murdered her husband. She said, I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. What a godly example that is for all of us. Even in the midst of unimaginable pain, she chose to respond with the love of Christ. She chose light over darkness. Folks, we're not called to look sophisticated. As Christ followers, we're called to be salt and light for Him every time we have an opportunity to do so. If we'll do that, there's more reasons for hope than despair, I promise. We'll be right back with your emails. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us. Just a reminder, if you ever miss a live episode, you can go to ajnow.com. There's a full archive there. It's easy to watch any program you want to, and even to share with a friend. The more, the merrier. And thank you for your emails. They are always a highlight. Jane from Michigan wrote, I've heard you say that we need to go beyond the walls of the church. I love this idea. I used to think when I sat in churches, why are we in four walls? Why don't we roll up one of the walls so that the neighborhoods and the people walking by can hear the singing and the message? I appreciate your calm, Christian, political viewpoints. Well, thank you, James. I try to keep the politics out of it and talk about our culture. Not so much about parties or candidates, but I believe we have to use our voices as Christians and churches to talk about what's happening in our culture. And speaking of rolling up the walls, every spring and every fall here in Murfreesboro, we take church outside. We put up an outside stage. We do concerts. We have church outdoors with food trucks and activities for children. The neighbors can hear. Some of them are happy and some not so much. But we're going back outside in a couple of weeks. Dixie from Texas wrote in. She said, Pastor Allen, I've been shocked at news reports from people, teachers, and politicians celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Some teachers in some states have been fired or put on leave for their comments on social media. Then they claim their First Amendment rights from the Constitution. They seem to forget these were Charlie Kirk's rights as well as all American citizens. Dixie, I have been surprised right along with you. It has been unfortunate, the attitude that has been taken by many people in celebrating Charlie's death, his assassination. The loss of a life of someone in that way is horrific. We should be praying for that family, praying for Turning Point USA, and praying for our nation. We've got to be able to have a conversation with one another, even if we don't always agree on the topic or the theme. We've got to have the right to have the conversation. We can't surrender that. We shouldn't expect others to either. David A. from Washington wrote, "Am I wrong? Daily I pray when awake. I pray before I sleep. I give blessings before every meal. I diligently read the Bible. I watch numerous TBN broadcasts, but I don't attend any church services or assemble with religious organizations. My deep religious feelings are private. Am I wrong?" Well, David, in a word, yes. Jesus' ministry was public. He came to minister to people. He didn't come on a secret mission to die on a cross. The Bible tells us not to forsake the assembling together of one another. I think we need community, not so much a church, but we need a community of like-minded believers in order to finish the race. Thank you for spending a few minutes with me today. I'm Alan Jackson, and I pray you have a wonderful evening.